My name is Douglas Dawson. I am the owner of the Douglas Dawson Gallery here in Chicago. We've been in Chicago since the early 1980s. We specialize in non-Western ethnographic art, and that is to say primarily the material production of pre-industrial non-Western countries and cultures. We try to engage people, just encourage them to have a really visceral, intuitive, spontaneous, aesthetic reaction to the material we show, and then elaborate upon it. So what are we looking at and why is it important? The collection that we gave to the Speed is a group of historic, traditional African ceramics. The common denominator to all these pieces is that they are traditional, they are earthenware, they are hand-built, that means they're not made on a potter's wheel, and they're not fired in a kiln, they're pit-fired, which is they're just piled up on the ground, a combustible material is placed on top of them. It's a bonfire, essentially. And also, very importantly, they're all made by women. They're not just strictly functional, and they all did have a function, but they also are all encoded with a lot of significant cultural information. Many of the pots in this show might have had several lives. They might originally have been made for the hearth, for a jar for going to the well and hauling water back to the house. And that same pot may have moved into the shrine and become a vehicle for negotiating the relationship between the mortal world and the immortal world. Obviously, for any culture living sort of always on the edge of peril, major issues were, of course, sustenance and fertility. And African art is imbued with a lot of metaphorical things, not just in ceramics, but in all areas of African art. Most of these cultures were what we refer to as animistic, and they were concerned with the spiritual world, which was manifested in natural phenomena. And so you find often in African ceramics an unexpected rhythm of how things are placed on the surface of the pot. Most cultures, when they decorate a pot, do it in a very predictable bilateral geometry. But Africans decorate pots differently than anybody else. There's a lot of space for the viewer to enter into the surface of the pot. Pottery production has undergone a really fundamental change, mostly since about World War II. Traditional animistic cultures converted either to fundamental Islam or a fundamental Christianity. If you go to West Africa today, you will see pottery in markets, but if you look closely, there is no social information encoded in the pots. They're just beautiful containers that could be from anywhere. When the pots no longer have any social information, have no meaning socially or culturally, it's very easy to stop using a pot and start using a container of plastic or enamelware. And I think that probably within the next few decades, it will be hard to find any traditional pottery being made. I thought it might be useful if we talked very specifically about a pot. How do we make this piece meaningful to us when we really have no intimate connection with it? So in this case, the woman has constructed this pot in several parts. She started with the base and probably built up this mount, allowed it to dry a little bit, and then added a coil of clay and then worked her way probably up to here, allowed it to dry again, and then added another coil of clay and finished it off. And again, this is not done on a potter's wheel. So as she's making this, she is walking around the pot. She's textured the bottom part of this. If you're picking this pot up, you grab it from here, and there's much more to hold on to, where the top 2/3 of this then become, again, a wonderful format for decoration. She's done what's called applique, so she has created three-dimensional imagery on here, all water imagery. The lizard in particular is a metaphor for rejuvenation. You can break the tail off of a lizard and it will grow another one. Interpreting these is never a sure thing. A lot of this could be her mark of her as a potter. It could reflect something about her household, something about her clan. It may be just pure whimsy. These pots really blur those distinctions between a fundamental utilitarian object, a ritual object, a ceremonial object. They become kind of all of that, which I think is one of the things that's particularly magical about African ceramics.